In order to talk about my Reckoning series, which is the work I did during COVID, I want to go back to my Pilgrim series before it, which I worked on for nearly 10 years, starting with this drawing, large graphite drawing. There's lots of bison and one human, just me naked, wearing a pilgrim hat in the series. Before you read too deeply into that, I'm really trying to create a cosmology, this kind of otherworldly place where there are familiar characters, but they're kind of out of place in weird juxtapositions, and using a lot of repeated imagery with symbols that mean something to me, but I don't really like to describe those. I like people to just experience this world. There's not a story or any coherent kind of narrative, but there's interactions between the characters and the space. And I like this idea at the time of combining rhythmic, decorative pattern that I invented with realistic imagery and that kind of strange juxtaposition between those things. Lots of crows, corn, wood, types of wood were part of that. It's really kind of just an absurdist allegory. And I worked on this for a long time. And coming into the Reckoning series, I was looking for a way to maybe move out of this series, which started in 2009, and to try to close it, at least temporarily. Maybe I'll come back to it. But I had some other interests that were kind of in my head, and I'll show you those after uh, I show you the Reckoning series. But at the end of the Reckoning series, you can see here, I started coming back more and more to these floodwaters. It became more of kind of a central focus of this series than it was at first. And so the Reckoning really takes that on. And of course, that is kind of obviously an allusion to climate change, although these are not works that are trying to convince anyone of anything. So here's the Reckoning. As you can see, the years, it's really the work, COVID work. And I was very influenced by my interest in Gothic painting and an early Netherlandish painting. Think Hieronymus Bosch or someone if you want, but also Italian painters, where they have this kind of very realistic parts to the painting when you look at the specific details, but then if you look at the cohesive whole, they're very artificial. And I like this mixture between artifice and realism, and it makes it kind of a strange, dreamlike place. So, like the Pilgrim series, these have rhythmic stylizations and kind of fake backgrounds and all this strange symmetry. I was really getting into symmetry. I think symmetry, traditionally is sacred, but there's something really creepy about symmetry too. So I was using that in a lot of works. And this new character of the owl is kind of the harbinger of doom. Like everything's coming to a head from the Pilgrim series. And I really do consider the Reckoning part of the Pilgrim series as just the end of it. And so the bison, this scroll says, beware of the one who has the answers. So a lot of the similar characters, I was working with some different materials, mostly oil paintings, and this was kind of out of my comfort level because trying to paint like Hieronymus Bosch or whatever, it's very detailed, it's very controlled. Here's a sculpture. My rare sculpture here. Everyone likes miniature stuff, so I had to make this. When I got the idea, I had to figure out how to make it. But that idea of, really tight, detailed painting with everything perfect, these are very smooth, that's real gold leaf. It's not in my nature, I'm more of a person who likes to fling the paint around. So it was a challenge and it was fun. Um, and I think it was good for COVID because you had these long stretches and these things took a really long time to do. Painting all those little birds and getting all the gold and everything. And you can see the climate change stuff is kind of coming to a head. Uh, with the owl as kind of the warning uh, that payment is due, and that culminates with a final painting where I have this human figure who is not me, and it's not a pilgrim, but it's actually Custer, George Custer of Old West fame. So that is to help transition into another series that I had already started before I finished this one. I had some solo shows for The Reckoning, and I had to finish those, but I was really starting to get interested into this Mythic West series that I'm working on now. So I'll show you what I'm doing now. I don't want to delve too deeply into the meanings of it because I'm not sure what they are. But during that same time I was doing the Reckoning pieces, I made these two little panels, also kind of very detailed and very smooth and perfect surfaces. Custer with one arrow. These are small little oil paintings on panel with gold leaf, and Custer with two arrows. And I didn't really know why. I just kept being compelled to paint Custer in these saintly poses, which, yeah, is pretty odd. And so I just kept going into that. And I think I was exploring my own kind of childhood love of cowboys. I really love, Old West outlaws, and reflecting on, why and what is that and what's the mythology behind that. And if you think of Western myth, what I'm doing is trying to kind of collapse that into a tradition of Christian myth and classical, Greek and Roman myth. And I started using these classical compositions for this series of watercolors. And these watercolors, again, overlap with, I was making these at the same time as the Reckoning series. And so coming out of these watercolors, I'm starting to have a better idea what I want to do. I'm using as a template a lot of these classical etchings and compositions, these really talented artists that no one ever heard of who create these amazing academic kind of compositions. And I wanted to, once I kind of figured out where this series was going, move into some larger oils. And so that's what I just started kind of last year with one piece. And now I have, this is the first oil painting, the only oil painting for this series that's done. It's very recently finished. Custer with three arrows. The oil version, you saw a watercolor version. And really, it's just a structure for me to paint, because part of this new series is so fun, is being all tight and controlled throughout COVID and lockdown, and painting those really detailed things, to paint big, to paint loose, to really explore my skills as a painter, flourishes of, color, and using some things I learned from having to get out of my comfort level and paint like that, like about glazing. So there's lots of layers and layers and layers of cadmium red on that one, for instance. This is one of the large canvases. It is not done. It actually doesn't even look like this anymore. So this thing is changing every day, but you'll see that one cherub on the right will be bright red like the one you saw in the previous painting. And then this one. So I think all 5 of the canvases that I've planned at the moment, but hopefully there'll be more, have these kind of red cherubs to kind of unify them. And I'm really excited about the work, and thanks for letting me show it to you. This is a drawing version, and this will be made into prints as well of the painting. Thanks again.